good evening, everybody. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Wednesday, October the 14th, 2020. This is Dialogues with Doc, and I am so excited to be back with you guys on this evening. So excited to be back with you guys on this evening. I did miss you guys last week. I just decided to take a break. So I've been starting this thing about the top of August, and I actually wanted to dive into the vice presidential debate on last week, flies and all. So I really enjoyed the vice presidential debate last week between Vice President Mike Pence and California Senator Kamala Harris. So I hope that you all are exercising your vote. In the coming weeks, we will be voting for the next phase of leadership for this country. So I hope you all are registered to vote. I hope you all are in the line doing early voting. If you're like me and you're doing absentee, please make sure that you fill the ballot out properly, that you mail it back in, or that you take it back into the drop-off point and make sure that your vote is counted, that your vote is heard. Many died and sacrificed for the right for us to vote. So let's use that vote. Let's use that right very proudly and very profoundly as we decide the leadership of the next phase for the next phase of this country. That's my plug for voting. Please make sure you're registered to vote. Please make sure you vote. I'm so glad to be back with you guys on this evening. Like I said, I did miss you guys last week. However, I did just decide to do after the show about taking care of self. I had a self-care moment as I was preparing for last week's show, and I said, you know what? Let me just take a break from this thing and watch the debate. So I'm back. I'm ready. I'm energized. I'm fired up, and I'm ready to talk about this week's topic. So this week's topic is, as you guys know, each week I think of a different topic to provide dialogue and insight about, and I try to do it by myself, but most times I decide to invite on different guests to help me share different perspectives and different ideas and different scenarios and more and to provide more input and more foundation with regards to these various topics. So if you've been hanging with me since the 5th of August, man, it's been since August I've been doing this. I've talked about the power of social media. The very first week we kicked it off with the importance of your dash. So you have a birthday and you have a death date. So we talked about the importance of the dash that lies in between when you were born and when you die. We've also talked about how talked about parenting in a pandemic. I had some parents on one weekend. They just talked about how this pandemic has been for them professionally and personally as far as their families. We've also talked about I've had an itinerary versus destiny moment where I had talked about itinerary and destiny. We've talked about HBCUs. We've had Black female educators on. We've had Black male educators on. And we just talked about a bunch of different things thus far. So tonight, I decided to go back to a topic that I love, which is higher education. If you know me, I am a higher education professional by trade and by choice. I did start the educational realm back in 2005, and that was not my traditional track. I was doing a bunch of other things. So I decided to leave the business admin aspect and log and do my thing in education. And so I did go to an HBCU and I went to a PWI. So there is a great debate going on about the difference between the two. And so tonight I decided to, you know what, let me bring on some individuals who can kind of help me shed light and provide a different perspective with regards to this HBCU versus PWI debate. So tonight, what I wanted to do was bring on educators and bring on professionals who can help me look at this thing from two separate lenses. I want to look at this thing from an educational lens, and I want to look at this thing from an employment lens. So we're going to talk about our paths and how we have been fortunate enough to be individuals who have attended PWIs and HBCUs, and we also have had an opportunity to be employed at PWIs and HBCUs. So tonight, I want to look at them and debate them from a different perspective. So it's not really a debate; it's more of an enlightenment. I feel like we are fortunate individuals who've been able to kind of travel both paths very closely. And so I wanted to bring on some individuals tonight who can help me look at this thing from an educational perspective and help me look at this thing from an employment perspective. So I said, hey, why not? Let me call on the Shirley brothers, who are fellow doctors, to help me lead and guide this conversation that we're going to talk about on tonight. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on the incomparable doctors, Zach and Greg Shirley, everybody. My brother.
Hello.
What's going on, brothers? Let me
What's
get
up,
y'all
brother?
right. Let me get my brothers right, because I got to make sure they right on my screen now. Hold on.
All right.
Hold on. I know I'm a one-man show, but I'm making it work. I got to get my brothers there. There we go. I got them on the screen and got the lower quarters going. So now I'm good. Zach and Greg, my brothers, how are you guys doing, man? Oh my God, it's been forever.
Brother Doctor, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you brothers doing?
You're good. We are all right. We making it, bro. Just like you, just like everybody else out here.
We just out here. We just out here doing our thing, man. You know how we do it. This is how we do.
Day by day, being young, gifted, and Black in America. So
this is what we do. So my brothers, I was telling everyone tonight for this topic, I needed some backup, but not in a bad way. Backup in a sense where we all have traveled similar paths, and so we can provide different perspectives to this debate. Yes, there is a debate about HBCUs versus PWIs, but I want to look at it strategically from a lens of this is the path I've traveled educationally, and this is the path that I'm traveling employment-wise professionally. So for those who don't know Dr. Greg and Dr. Zach, just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started tonight.
All right. Well, we are both graduates from Paul Quinn College, similar to Dr. Green. So proud Paul Quinn alumni. We are the class of 2005. And really, we enjoyed thoroughly our HBCU experience. You know, my brother went to 2 HBCUs. He started off at Jarvis, transferred to Paul Quinn, because, you know, Calvin, you know, we was more lit at the Quinn than they was at Jarvis. And so, but really traversed the campus in one of those active type of student ways, right? Like Paul Quinn, as many HBCUs, as many institutions, period, PWI or HBCU, had so many involvement opportunities. So we was a little bit of everything as undergrads. So much so that I think that really formulated the love for wanting to go into higher education, student affairs. And so we ended up, once we graduated, went to Texas A&M University of Commerce, which is a predominantly white institution in East Texas, similar to you, Dr. Green, and went on to complete our master's in higher ed and eventually start doctoral programs. And so for me, I will say that having not gone to a PWI for undergrad, it was very different. Like just the culture, period. Different types of cultures, cultural norms, educational norms. Like, you know, you ain't really expecting, you're expecting fried chicken Thursday in the cab after chapel. Well, first of all, there's no chapel service. And then you got a myriad of things in the cab. So it may not be fried chicken Thursday or fish Friday. You know, just seeing how academically things were different as well. And from a resource standpoint, I'll say that some resources that we just didn't have at HBCUs. And so I will say again that was just a very, for me, different type of environment and having to learn how to navigate a campus. You know, at that point in time, A&M Commerce probably wasn't more than 10,000 students, but Paul Quinn was like 600-700. So it was 950, close to 1,000. Well,
when we were there, it was.
Yeah. When we were there, it was. Yeah, after we left, it took a dive. But seeing, whereas at Paul Quinn, you could stand in the middle of the yard by the bell and see almost all the buildings. At A&M Commerce, it wasn't like that. You know, and then I went on to go on to University of North Texas for my doctorate, a much larger campus. At that point in time, UNT was close to 35,000. And just, again, you know, seeing those different nuances definitely was a culture shock for me.
Definitely. I echo that. We didn't really understand the impact that going to a PWI would have on us coming from that small HBCU. And there were some things that we just didn't know that we had to get into our intake process mind and learn along the way as we were going through whatever it was that we were going through. Greg, did you want to chime in?
I mean, I definitely will echo those sentiments as well. And I can remember being in high school and we went to a predominantly white high school. And the first inkling was I was going to go to UT Arlington for undergrad. But I sat back and I thought it wasn't conceptualized back then because I didn't know the verbiage and how to articulate it back then, but I know now. And it's with so many of our students now where there's this renaissance or this resurgence of going back to an HBCU because of everything that's happened politically and everything that's happened nationally in the United States. I got the rest of my life to be around white people. I want to be in Wakanda for at least 4 years of my life. And so I was blessed to be able to go to Jarvis Christian College originally and then transfer to Paul Quinn. And I feel like, and Dr. Green, you and my brother and people we've graduated with, we've all said this before. Going to Paul Quinn and matriculating at a historically Black college or university really strengthens you and gives you that thicker skin and that resolve for life. And it's like what you posted earlier. If you can wait in line in financial aid at an HBCU, you can wait in line at the polls.
Come on,
go vote, y'all. Go vote.
There's a purpose in both.
Yeah. And so the thing about it is, whenever I see young professionals who did not, and this is nothing against a predominantly white institution because I've worked at historically Black colleges, I've worked at predominantly white institutions, but the resolve and the tenacity of an HBCU student, I won't say it's greater. However, it's markedly different than someone at a PWI simply because there are things that our PWI alums in undergrad have to struggle with that we didn't have to struggle with at a HBCU. So I was looking at a friend of ours' Facebook, and one of his friends commented that she went to the University of North Texas her freshman year. And when she went to Cracker Barrel in Denton, that was like a very racist experience. We didn't have to experience that because we was, in Highland Hills. Everybody was Black. We go down to the pilot. It be you, me, Sean, and Zach going down to that Wendy's or that pilot.
Come on.
We kicked that guitar and we would go.
Off 20.
Off 20. But I didn't get a refund check the first time until I was at a white institution. So I definitely feel like they both have their place in making me the professional that I am. I personally cannot sit here and say that I will be the consummate professional that I am if I did not have the Black college experience, well, the HBCU experience, because there's a Black college experience, Black experience at a predominantly white institution. If I didn't have the HBCU experience, and because words mean things, and the white experience as well.
So Lord, y'all done messed me all the way up. I had a plan over here, but we didn't all. This is what we do. We always
we
get together. We just go. I'm gonna go back because and just jump in here. So, what made you choose HBCU? Like for me, I didn't know anything. So for me, my path was, for those who don't know, I finished at Paul Quinn, but I started at the University of Houston. So I did my first years of undergrad at U of H. And when my mom got sick, I'll never forget Miss Nina Taylor Ritchie at Paul Quinn. I had no idea about Paul Quinn at all. I went up to Paul Quinn on a whim, January of 2001, trying to find out what the admission process was like. And I met Miss Nina Taylor Ritchie in admissions. She said, "Baby, do you want to go to school?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Fill out this application right now. Put it in, submit it today, and you won't have to take that semester break. We'll still have admissions open." So I didn't have to take that break off, that semester off before I started. So that's how I ended up at Paul Quinn, and I loved it. But what made you guys choose an HBCU?
So I think similarly, one of the things that's similar between the three of us that we all ended up transferring and graduating from somewhere else. But I started off at DeVry. I went to a technical school because I was like, once we graduated high school, I hated school. But our mama, and Calvin, our mama, she was like, "Oh, you going somewhere? You going somewhere?" And so started off at DeVry. It didn't work out. My brain was not wired for that, which it's fine. So ended up actually dropping out and going to get a job at Bank of America. And I was like, all right, but I'm not even gonna go to school. I'm gonna just work. Meanwhile, my brother, he started his freshman year at Jarvis. He was ending his freshman year, starting a sophomore year. I hadn't started nothing. Now, mind you, we graduated in 1999, May of 1999. So he had fall 99, spring 2000, fall 2000, spring 2001. And I was content with working. So I would always go visit my brother down at Jarvis, though, and I would see like the feel of it. Like he said, we went to a predominantly white high school. So this was both of our first time really seeing something like that. And another friend of ours, two more friends of ours actually, Shamaria and Jamil, went down to Jarvis with him. We had graduated from high school with them. So
like I went down with Jamil because Jamil tricked me.
Jamil did trick him.
Jamil tricked Shamaria and I.
Jamil Lamar Tucker, you are watching this, you tricked Greg.
Jamil the time in.
And so, but I would see this camaraderie, Calvin. I would see this familial aspect. You know, when I went to Jarvis, it was like Greggy's friends was my friends, and I had never met them before, but by proximity, that's what it was. And so that familial aspect really attracted me. But in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna just keep working till one day I got off work. My mama busted in my room and said, I don't know what you're finna tell these people at this job, but you finna go to school. So I don't care if you gotta quit or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And as she's turning and walking away, and she left my door open, by the way. She didn't even close my door.
That was her door.
That was her door.
Because it was her house.
She screamed at my dad and said, Gregory, take Zachary down to Paul Quinn. And so my daddy loaded me in the car, and very similarly to you, Calvin, because I started at Paul Quinn in spring 2001 as well. Very similarly to you, I met Artemis Hayes. And Artemis Hayes was like,
Missy Hayes.
She was like, oh, we can get him in, Mr. Shirley. We can get him in. Come with me. And the next thing I had a class schedule, and I went to my job and told them that night that I was quitting. But looking back, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. Because had that I'm not happy, I wouldn't be who I am, to my brother's point, who I am professionally today.
And so it's like we made the decision, but something clicked that said, I got to change something. So when we look at how we started, what made my brothers change their educational path after undergrad? I know for me, remember when I left, I was SGA president.
Yeah,
I was a business major. So, but I will say that following and Greg and Zach, you guys can attest to this. Being a student leader under Dr. Fennell, we were exposed to different things. So I remember I was a business major, and I had aspirations to have my own business. But being around him and going to board meetings and stuff like that, it intrigued for me the educational aspect. So that's how I actually ended up at Commerce doing a higher ed major, because I wanted to work at a college and I wanted to work in student affairs. So what made you guys change after undergrad and say, you know what, let me go to a PWI and add even more to my foundational, my educational foundation because I know I'm going to be a professional one day in that regard.
Well, shout out to Calvin Green, because we wouldn't have known Commerce had a higher education program if you hadn't gone. So shout out to you for that. But Zach and I eventually both ended up being secondary education majors. And then we started student teaching at a high school that shall remain nameless in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And we were like, I'm not gonna cuss on your program. But we was like, we can't do this. We're not doing this. And it was like 6 weeks before graduation. We will graduate. So we graduated with our secondary education degrees, but we said we could not teach high school. And so for me, I always knew that I wanted to help young people. Even in high school, when I went to college, I told our mother, I want to be a teacher. I want to teach history because I love history. She said, you're not going to make no money. You're going to go to Jarvis. You're going to major in business and computers. And that's what you're going to do. And that's what I did. I gave the people this nice little piece of paper. I was like, my mama said at 18. Which now, ladies and gentlemen, that is management information systems. That is what business and computers are together. That is a major. It's a great major, but it wasn't similar to Zach. I'm not wired for the technical in that aspect. So we switched our majors to secondary education, but then like you, I was SGA president. Zach was my vice president. Zach was president of his undergraduate chapter for Phi Beta Sigma. I was vice president. And so
we had always been involved. And so, yes, shout out. So not necessarily Dr. Fennell, but Dr. Cynthia Marshall Biggins.
Now, to be a child of Cynthia.
To be a child of Cynthia is to walk in holiness, because holiness is always right.
Shout out to Big C.
Because she would not go in the window.
Hey, you already know when she tap on the window and say, "Come here," you gotta go quickly.
You're like, I gotta go to class. I'll write you a note. I got a test. I'll get you excused.
Mind you, her window was on the second floor, but she tapped real hard.
Real hard. Yeah, it was just something I think about how involved we all were. Calvin, to your point, there were very few people at Paul Quinn who weren't in a couple of different things. You know, we were orientation leaders at Paul Quinn before we even were called orientation leaders.
We didn't know what it was called. We just knew
we got a shirt and we got to register for everybody else. And Cynthia would pull us in and be like, "Come help these babies."
We just knew we got a polo shirt, some khakis, and we had to register, and we got to register for our classes early. That's all we knew. We didn't know it was an orientation, nothing.
Right. We was orientation leaders, y'all, but we wasn't.
It didn't always help us do financial aid line, though.
It didn't. You know, but I think that, you know, you being SGA president, you being homecoming king, me being SGA vice president, me being homecoming king, Greggy, you know, being SGA president at the time of, you know, us like trying to get rid of curfew in the residence halls. Like Greggy being president of NAACP at the time of 9/11. Like, yeah. We were, like you said, we were ingrained in activism and involvement in a lot of different ways. And so I think that fueled the fire for us to then want to recreate that for students, because it did a lot for all three of us.
Right, it did. It did. Oh, wow. Angela said she chose to go to HBCU because her mom spoke highly of Alcorn. And then Damaris said, "Thank you for doing this. We'll be showing this to my kids that are in high school that are part of the African American Association." Tracy said, "I was involved in Texas College." Oh, that's y'all, Eric. That's y'all, man, right there, Upward Bound. Like these are the different things that we were exposed to that pushed us to say, hey, there's a little bit more outside of the gates of 3837 that I haven't even been exposed to as of yet, because I'm having a great experience, but I'm also sheltered from the world as well. So let me think about a different educational path after undergrad. So thank you guys for sharing that. Here's the things my HBCU taught me. So patience. Okay. What?
Adaptability.
Accountability.
Accountability. So I was having a conversation with one of my fraternity brothers last night, actually, about HBCU and PWI. He went to a PWI. He went to Wright State, and so one of the things that I told him last night that an HBCU taught us was how to really make something out of nothing. Like, it could be 3 algebra books in the bookstore and 20 of us in the class. But we finna figure out how everybody finna use these 3 algebra books. Yeah. You know, so it taught it taught us how to really see a problem and be like, all right, y'all, we gotta get it. Like, we didn't have the resources of a lot of our PWI counterparts, of copious amounts of books in the bookstore, Scantrons in the bookstore, paper in the printer,
books in the bookstore,
hot water in the residence hall.
Bring your own. Go buy you a couple sheets of paper from Miss Gladys to put in the printer, and pray that somebody didn't leave a print job so that your stuff prints out on it properly. Because if they didn't cancel the job, they gonna print on your paper, and you're gonna be mad.
Right. You know, and I mean, you get a lot of folks who talk about, you know, the struggles of HBCUs and all of that. And I mean, I don't know if we were just ignorant at the time to the fact, but it was like, all right, damn, this is a problem. But after like 15 minutes, we didn't have the ability to wallow and complain.
Listen,
We had to figure some stuff out.
We gotta figure some ish out.
I can remember when I went to Jarvis and the first time the water went out in the residence hall. Not just the hot water, the water. And it went out on a Friday night. We didn't know about it because we all went to sleep. We woke up Saturday. There was no water. They would leave 2 gallons of water outside of our room. 1 gallon was for you, 1 gallon was for your roommate. Wow. And I can remember thinking, this is the most ghetto, frackle, knackle book. But I mean, it just happened. Like it just happened. Like all you could do is laugh. And you know, it's in things like that that misery loves company. And I would talk to a lot of our colleagues and a lot of Calvin, you and I's fraternity brothers. It's like, oh, well, I can't imagine, you know, doing that. I would, you know, I'm like, well,
we did it.
We did it. And you know what? I got hot water now. I mean, I've never been one of those people to wallow in stuff like that and really just think that I'm better than, because when you do think that, then you forget where you come from. And then when you're dealing with students who come from those situations, those circumstances, you don't know how to process that and conceptualize. You don't know how to humble yourself and have humility to see where that student is coming from. Because let's not forget, we ain't all been where we are now.
Right.
We all went through a aqua phase or a storm.
Go ahead.
Oh, well,
you go ahead.
And, you know, for me, you know, what an HBCU taught me was, as I looked around, even though we were in Highland Hills and we were in a very urban area, and we could go ahead and say Paul Quinn is in a very impoverished area. It's in a food desert. But going outside, and Zach and I lived off campus. So we lived in Duncanville, Texas, back when Duncanville was still fairly white. I knew that this wasn't going to last forever. And I knew that I was going to have to fill up my reserves of this unapologetic blackness back when there was a Wakanda, but we didn't know about Wakanda the way we do now.
Right.
Going into a world where I am the only. And so going to Commerce, rural Northeast Texas, I mean, it was a culture shock, but I was able to say, you know what? I always got my reserves. I've always got homecoming. I've always got these things that I can go back to refill my bucket.
And I like what you said there. It's like we don't go back regularly, but because we have the memories and the moments when we do go back, it just brings up, they just all flood back immediately. So I don't have to be, we all know people that graduate but never leave, but we have graduated, we've left, we moved on, gone on to greater things. And when we do go back, it's bittersweet to see how far you come from or how much you've accomplished. I like the things you guys are saying. Like, there are definitely things that going to an HBCU can teach you, but there are also some things that going to a PWI can teach you as well. So let's talk about it. So for me, going to A&M Commerce was a culture shock for me, from the aspect of you get there and I'm the only one that looks like me in my class. I'm the only one when there's a topic of discussion and, well, Calvin, what do you think? And you want me to speak for the entire African American population, which I can't do that. You know, they're just certain, I can only speak from my experiences or my perspective. These are some of the things that going to the PWI taught me: how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to be more accountable, how to navigate my own path. You know, how we would get our own. Cynthia taught us to get our own degree plan and make sure they don't mess you over. So I learned that at Paul Quinn. So when I got to the PWI, let me get this degree plan for this doctoral program and take this class in this order and that order and that order, so that I'm even more actively responsible for my path, because I don't want to pay more money than I have to. So those are some of mine. What about you guys?
I would echo a lot of those same sentiments. And I mean, I think Greggy said it a lot earlier. Both experiences can teach you the same thing, but in different ways. Like, I think my HBCU experience taught me accountability, but my PWI experience taught me accountability in a totally different way. Accountability at HBCU is all right, if I miss class, they finna walk around this campus and find us. Like Dr. Miles Smalls is finna walk dead in that student center and say, have you seen Zachary Shirley? He missed my 10 o'clock class. A PWI teaches accountability in the fact of ain't nobody checking for you. They're not gonna come look for you. So you have to be accountable to get your own stuff done, because if you don't go, guess what? You're gonna fail. And it ain't gonna be no second chances. You know, a PWI taught me, whereas the HBCU taught me how to embrace my Blackness in every aspect that it is. The PWI experience taught me how to protect my Blackness and cherish it for the gift that it is, because there are going to be other people who are not cherishing and protecting your Blackness, who are going to try and vilify you for it.
I like that, Jigga.
Right. It taught me how to, I'll say a PWI also taught me how to navigate different spaces, right? We were given this gift of community. And at a PWI, sometimes depending upon the size of the PWI, sometimes we have to find the community.
Right. We gotta go find our own people.
Right, we gotta find our own people. But again, the PWI in that vein taught me how to go searching for that and following the path to finding it. So they both taught me very valuable things. 3 things that I would say that a PWI taught me. The first one is how to effectively code switch, because code switching is a thing that it's like innate, and we have no choice. Because of the world we live in. The second thing is, much to your point, Calvin, it taught me to be more resolute in letting white people know that Black people are not a monolith, that we come in many different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, everything. Like, we're twins and we're completely different people. And then much to a point that, as people say, 2 bodies, 1 brain, or they are as different as they are alike. But then also, much to what Zach's point is, it taught you, a PWI can teach you to find your people. A PWI will also show you that all your skin folk ain't your kinfolk. We can take a look at, the Attorney General for Kentucky, and we can see that. We can take a look at, I was reading an article today. Ice Cube is really working with Donald Trump. And I don't want to make this a political thing, but he's working with Donald Trump. He's worked with Democrats and Republicans for this, pro-Black plan. Once I saw it had his name in it, I'm going to tell y'all right now, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. So sorry if you got sponsors, Calvin, that are pro-Trump, but hopefully I didn't mess up your sponsorship cycle. And I didn't vote for Donald Trump. But the thing about it is, so as soon as I saw Ice Cube, Donald Trump, I clicked out. Like, I can't. No. I got to pick my piece. And so
I won't.
Yes. And so me having to be okay with that, me having to be okay with, once again, if I'm here advocating that Black people aren't a monolith, I also have to be cognizant and be okay with the fact that everybody is not going to think and be what I feel like they need to be just because they are Black, because their learned experiences and their lived experiences are vastly different than mine. And so that comes into me being able to protect my peace and being able to say, okay, well, I need to occasionally be in my bubble as, a Black gay man with a doctorate degree. And so something else that a PWI taught me is, oftentimes, white institutions are much more accepting of my sexual orientation than HBCUs. And students and peers and faculty are much more acceptable of that and much more tolerant. And so what I've always said is Black people love me because I'm a Black man, but may not necessarily like me because of my sexuality. But white people can't stand me because I'm a Black man, but they just, are over the moon about the fact that I'm gay. Oh my God. Tell me everything.
It's funny you segued into that, because I was getting ready to close the educational conversation and go to the employment side. So it's funny you say that, because my next question was, can you describe your experiences of working at, because we've gone to both. We went to the HBCU, we've gone to the PWI. Now we're older. Now we're working there. We've had experiences working at the HBCU, and we have and still have experiences working at the PWI. So let's talk about it. What are some major differences between working at the Quinn or working? Zach didn't officially work there, but he was a student worker. We exactly.
And the marshal's office. I'll say this. And Calvin, you remember this. It was you, me, Dr. Devonta Foster Pierre, and Miss Wiley. And it was homecoming. And you and me was working at Paul Quinn, and we was out there kicking it at homecoming. And I can remember Dr. Devonta Foster Pierre was like, Mr. Green, they're out there drinking. And you was like, it's homecoming. And then you was like, can't necessarily do that at a PWI.
Nah.
And so I say that to say, I feel like working at, and maybe this is also a disclaimer, Calvin and I worked at the institution that we graduated from.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like if I were at any HBCU, just to tell people that I matriculated at an HBCU is enough. Now, it's going to be that ribbing. Like, it's going to be the ribbon of, okay, well, you in a different D9 fraternity or sorority. But if y'all the only two Black people in that white institution, y'all like this.
Exactly.
If I go to FAMU or I go to Wiley or I go to Spelman or whatever, even though I graduated from Paul Quinn College, yeah, there may be that gentle ribbing. However, I feel like it's coming from more of a familial perspective.
Yeah.
It's like siblings. I could talk about them, but ain't nobody else gonna talk about them.
Yeah. Nobody. Don't do it.
Now, the last thing I will say, and I'll let y'all choose to elaborate on this or not. It ain't all roses working at a Black college. It ain't all, the grass ain't always greener. There's a lot of things that we need to work on and not to say that PWIs don't have to work on fiscal management, because they do. Not to say that PWIs need to have better diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, because they do. They don't do the job. It's like the meme says, white institutions are like, we're combating institutional racism. Baby, you are the institutional racism. So let's talk about it. However, historically Black colleges and universities, y'all, we got to work better on our fiscal management.
Yeah,
historically Black colleges and universities. We need to work on our diversity, equity, and inclusion for sexual orientation and,
diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd love to see a Black college talk about gender identity. I'd love to see a Black college talk about transphobia and homophobia and things like that.
It's like they're scared to talk about the obvious.
Yes.
And as higher ed continues to evolve, especially at HBCUs, let's talk about it. We have to talk about it and address it. If you guys remember, we were in undergrad and the whole Morehouse guys wanted to wear heels and stuff like that. The class, that whole debacle.
Mm-hmm.
It's the harsh reality of what nobody wants to deal with, or nobody wants to talk about, and it's everywhere. It's not just at your flagships or your smaller institutions. These are things that have to be talked about, that have to be addressed, because these are things that could possibly attract more people to want to go to these institutions, but because you don't want to talk about it, or it's the old Black family secret of sweeping it under the rug, we'll worry about it later. It hurts you in the long run.
It definitely does. And you know, Twan teaching these girls these J-set routines for this halftime show.
And has done their hair before the halftime show.
And it's their coach and is taking them through the motions. And you know. And the thing about it is, I will see, especially at our smaller Texas Association of Developing Colleges, the smaller HBCUs in Texas that are religiously affiliated, they have such a stigma towards the LGBTQ community. But look at your girls' basketball team. Look at your girls' volleyball team. Look at who you got praise dancing at chapel. And who you got, once again, teaching the cheerleaders and the J-setters or the dance team their routines. So you want to use these young people. You want to tokenize these young people for their talent. And because they're young and they're looking for belonging, they're going to take whatever little bit that you can give them. However, you're not accepting and embracing and even tolerant of something that is not your business in the first place.
And I will say this, my brothers, because we've traveled similar paths. We've gone to the HBCUs, we've gone to the PWIs, we've worked at the HBCUs, we worked at the PWIs. 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been able to have this vast conversation and look from a different lens about it because we were just breaking into. But hell, we veterans now. We've been around a while. We worked at several institutions. We can't deny what we see. It is what it is, and it's going to be what it's going to be. Our job, like you're saying, is address it and let's talk about it and keep having these open conversations, even when they don't want to. And no matter how uncomfortable it is, they're going to always be uncomfortable about it just because. But like you said, let's talk about it.
And I think, Calvin, that brings an excellent point to what I see is the difference between working at an HBCU and a PWI. At a PWI, you're going to be exposed to all different types of students, colleagues, faculty. Like, you're going to be exposed to between 8 and 5 or really 8 and 8, because you know how these programs go in student affairs. You're going to be exposed to, probably your first trans student or your hourly trans student. You're going to be exposed to someone who may come from a small East Texas town, grew up with Fox News, and you're their advisor because they're a member of a fraternity, or they going into Career Center and going to see, they just so happen to get Greggy, and it's the first time they done been around somebody black and they don't know how to behave. That happened to me at Commerce. I had a young white girl, 18 years old, that started crying in my office, and her advisor, her instructor, purposely had her see me because I was the only person of color at the time in the Career Center. And she called me and she said, I want her to see you. But she didn't tell me. She was like, I was like, well, she's like, when is your schedule open? I'm like, I'm pretty busy. As soon as you're open, I need you to see her. She cannot see the director. She cannot see anybody else. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. So she came in, Calvin, I just thought she was timid. She was a freshman. She was from a small East Texas town. I was doing a mock interview with her. Literally, the first question I asked her that you get in an interview, tell me about yourself. She turned beet red. She started hyperventilating, and her eyes started to well up. And I'm like, well, what's wrong? Am I asking you an aggressive question? And literally, the words came out her mouth, right hand of God. I've never been in a room with a black man by myself before. So I opened that door real quick. And so then it started talking about how there was only 2 black men or 2 black boys in her high school. Everybody else was white. She was like, her father and her brothers had very disparaging remarks about black men. And she came to Commerce. She moved into the residence hall, and she was in a leadership program that was predominantly people of color. If there were 24 people in that cohort, I guarantee you 20 were black or brown. And all she said was, they just play their music so loud, and they're just always so loud in the hallways. And I just don't understand. And I don't want to come out of my room because they're just always there. And I'm like, in my head, are you saying they because of them or they because they're black and brown?
Right.
And all she wanted to do, Calvin, she was a music major. She wanted to graduate and go be the band director back at her high school. After that semester, she did not come back.
Wow. And it's crazy because that's why you were talking about it. So I put the question up. Had you not worked at a PWI, these are some of the type of professional things we probably wouldn't have had a chance to. I mean, even Zach, you've done the panhellenic work for so long as an African American male, and that deals with the white fraternity and sororities. Working at an HBCU, we get enough of us. When you go to a PWI, you're able to be exposed to other avenues and other opportunities like that. Like Greg was talking about that young lady. Even with you working with the fraternities, I'm sure what people see on some movies, you've lived over and over again with cake parties and
I'm sure when Trump was elected in 2016, that was real fun.
So I will say the opportunity, I would have not had the opportunity to work with my Panhellenic and Interfraternity Council students and my Multicultural Greek Council students to an extent had I not worked at a PWI. And what I take from those experiences is an appreciation to have the ability to have the tough conversations with my students who identify as white within these organizations, and have that ability to help them navigate through whatever dissonance they have. Actually, Tania, I love my Panhellenic. I like IFC. I love Panhellenic. I love all my students. But I mean, I think that there's something to be said though about having the opportunity to, again, Calvin, you've mentioned it. Greg kind of mentioned to be that only person in the room. And so I too have a story similar to Greggy's. At an institution that I once worked at, I had a IFC and Panhellenic advisor meeting. And this was a lot of these advisors' first time meeting me. So it was myself and our dean of students at the time. And I already knew I was going to be the only person of color in the room, let alone black. So we walk in the room, we're all sitting down, and we hadn't really done introductions yet, but some people are looking at me like, who this kid? Who is this? You know, and so then people start talking, and our dean of students at the time starts talking, and the question is asked, when is Dr. Shirley going to get here? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Shirley's right here. And the looks on some of them folks' faces when the short gay black man was identified as the person over the Greek system, and he has a terminal degree, and so we go on along the night, and one of the alumni advisors asked me, I'm talking about like recruitment practices and all of these things, and one of them asked me, well, what qualifies you to do this job? And I said, oh, here we go. I said, well, one, I have a terminal degree. Two, at that time in my career, I had close to 12 years of experience. Three, I've written a dissertation on fraternity and sorority life. And four, where you are an expert on one chapter, I'm an expert on all of these because I have to be. No more questions about there were no more questions about my expertise.
Let me pull out these receipts. Let me pull out my receipts.
Exactly.
Let me pull out these receipts.
Who can I make this shade out to?
And so I think, though, that unfortunately, on the unfortunate side, it exposes us to microaggressions and just flat out blatant systemic racism and aggressions. On the other side, though, I think that in some instances, it allows us to sharpen our skill set and be able to have that read ready. Like
It's ready. The read is on the tip of my tongue. I want you to say something because I've been sitting on this read all day. You know, I have my glasses on and the library is open. What can I check out for you? And so it puts you though also in a space to where I don't think that I would have been able to do the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that I am able to do now had I have not worked at a PWI, because I am having the opportunity to learn every single day what this work looks like. And I am by no means a DEI and belonging expert. However, I will put myself in the space to do the work because in fraternity and sorority life, especially, we have issues with that. And it's across the board. You know, DEI and belonging in Panhellenic and IFC, we have those problems in MPAC and MGC as well. Again, we talk about our trans students who may want to have an opportunity to join our organizations. You might not even find an openly trans student at an HBCU, but we got them at PWIs and they want to join these organizations. And then you got some of our MPAC organizations who have written doctrine that says, oh, you have to be a naturally born male or female
and present your birth certificate.
To join. What kind of shit is that? You know, and conversely, the age old, you know, in Panhellenic recruitment, we're going to pair the one black girl up with the black girl that's coming through recruitment because we want to make her feel welcome. Or can it not just be
y'all make her feel welcome?
Y'all make her feel welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
You know,
Good to see you.
right. You know, so unpacking conversations like that. But I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have these conversations and do this work had I not worked at a PWI.
And me working at a PWI, you know, Zach brought up a trans student. When I was at my previous institution, I had a conversation with a trans student. And I don't feel like that could have been a conversation that, and once again, nothing against my colleagues that work in career and professional development at an HBCU. However, y'all know it's different. And so I've been working in career and professional development going on 13 years. At my previous institution, I created our Inclusion Constituency Council, which brought together our students with disabilities, our veterans, our TRIO upward bound students, our LGBTQ students, our students in fraternity and sorority life and student orgs, because as that director said, I catch all these students. I have students that are in these organizations that are veterans or first gen or LGBTQ or have a disability. And I can remember this, the gentleman came in and he came in for a resume review. He saw my rainbow flag on my bookshelf and he said, "Oh, are you an ally?" And at my age, I'm like, no, I'm one of the kids. So, you know, I'm with the shits. And so I said, no, I'm gay. And he said, okay, well, how do I have the conversation? Because I just recently had gender reassignment surgery, but my birth certificate and my social security card still says my female identity. How do I have that conversation? So I'm like, let's put this resume to the side because he's trans, he's a veteran, he's undocumented, and he had a disability. He had PTSD. And so he had all these things, all these other things, but he thought the resume was the most important or critical thing. And I'm like, no. And we're in Texas. And so being at a predominantly white institution and being on both sides of the fence, seeing the discrimination and how that discrimination affects people at a HBCU as well as a PWI has made me better equipped to have these conversations and have these courageous conversations and be an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I work with employers. You know, I work with companies and organizations. And so for me, I'm more able to go into these spaces and say, where's your EEO statement on your website? Because I looked at your website and it's not on the landing page. I don't see it. I have to dig for it. What does your board of directors look like? How diverse is your board of directors? Because now I work at an institution that's 89% women, a Hispanic serving institution, and a large first gen population. So where's your diverse? Well, we're trying to work on that. How? Tell me how. Because I don't need
I don't want to send my students there if you can't I don't want to send students. I don't want to send my students as applicants there if you're not going to support them in ways that they're going to need support if they are offered a position with this company. We know what our students need. We know what our students deserve. And I don't want you as a partner of mine to serve the student population that I work with if you can't check all the boxes to help support them.
And the words of Smokey's mama in Friday, make it work. Make it enough.
Making it up, brothers. Y'all, let me tell y'all something. So I'm all over the place because of y'all, but it's good. That's why I love y'all. Let me see. Let me see where I'm going. Let's go here. Go. We still in the employment phase. The employment lens. What has been a rose and a thorn, both attending and working at a HBCU? See, Greg already told mine. For those who just joined, when we worked at Paul Quinn, we were on the student affairs team, and when it was homecoming, we staff that went there, we participated as well. So it was kind of hard. So it was kind of hard for me to tell students to put whatever they had away to stay engaged when that's just how we do. And I would tell them, but it's like,
baby,
okay,
is it in here? Baby, it's fine. I don't know what's in here. Could be juice. You grown. I'm about to shake your cup. That's jerk.
But that honestly was one of my roses and my thorns. And I'll never forget, Ebony reminded me a couple of weeks ago. I had Ebony Office King on where I did the panel. And she said, remember when you shut down our probate? And I was like, dang, I forgot I did that. But I remember I did have to put on my administrator role and shut down the AKA probate one year because the paperwork wasn't done right. Y'all know me. Paperwork is king, and it got to be done right to do whatever. But yeah, those were some of my roses and thorns. However, roses were being able to go back and work where I graduated from, being able to serve with Greg. We did career services for years. It's something that we never thought we would end up doing, but learning more about the intricacies of how to prepare a resume, how to do professional development, BEEP, National Urban League type stuff. These are all things that I really enjoy working at an HBCU. That's mine. I'm sorry. Let me let y'all go. My guess. I digress.
I mean, I think a rose is again being immersed and wrapped up into the actual culture, like capital T, capital C, the culture. Like you walk into these spaces with these learned, savvy, dynamic professors and professionals, and like they know they stuff, and they look like you. They've earned terminal degrees. They have these conversations and are able to navigate, and are able to pour that into you. And so I would say for me, that's the rose, like being able to just feel when you walk onto an HBCU campus. Like every time I walk on the Paul Quinn's campus, anytime I walk onto any HBCU campus, there's this envelopment of energy that just comes over. It's like my powers have been magnified because I think about the rich culture of the grounds that people before us came into that campus and walked on. I think about when we sit in these classrooms, and they're not the best, the most technologically advanced, but there is so much learning that occurred in those walls. Like that just does something to me and for me.
It's crazy you say that because Zach and I met in biology class. And Dr. Weldon J. Walton, God bless his soul, was an instructor that would come in the classroom with no notes. He would go straight to the board and start writing with his piece of chalk. And you better be in place taking those notes because he knew. And when class was over, when we would come back on the next day, which would be Thursday, he would know exactly where he left off on the previous day. You're sitting there like, how did this man remember that? But that was a rose for me because it eventually ended up where I thought about it when you were talking. When we would see him after we graduated as doctors, and he would, Dr. Shirley, Dr. Green, how'd you do? Like for you to be my professor at one point and now you're letting me know and acknowledging me that I'm on the same level as you, and you're like it put a smile on his face to see us after the fact that we graduated and came back still, like, you know, it's like little rays of sunshine for him to see, like, these are my pupils that are now doctors as well, that I'm affirming in a sense.
But I'm gonna say this, Calvin, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. We ain't never gonna be that sharp though, because he can't. That one piece of no notebook, no book,
no notes at all. Angela said,
no notes at all. Actually, no, he came in with one piece of paper, y'all. And the only reason that piece of paper was there was for the roll. And he passed that piece of paper around and we were signing. But other than that, he laid that roll down, that piece of paper down. Let's begin. And took up the whole chalkboard. And we like, oh. What was my thorn? Oh, my thorn. I would say my thorn was definitely
waiting so long.
Waiting so long. Yep.
So Miss Alveda said, taking the Paul Quinn.
Yeah, now that I will say, actually, I should have went earlier. That's what I should have did. But you know what? Things happen the way they happen for a reason. God has his time. I think the roles for me. I think the roles for me was and is the fact that I can show people and continue to perpetuate the fact that greatness comes from an HBCU. Mm-hmm. You know, there was a time when we couldn't go anywhere else, where we didn't have any options. And so it's interesting for me when I read that article, like right after, you know, Donald Trump was elected, and there was a resurgence, like I talked about earlier, of people enrolling into historically Black colleges and universities because of things that were happening at PWIs. And so it was a little disheartening for me because I'm like, we've always been here. Mm-hmm. But now y'all see that we the shit. However, for me, it's just knowing that there's that richness and that history that's there. It's like being in a, you know, D9 organization or a Black organization like Links or things like that. There's history there through adversity and trials and tribulations. And we have survived that. And so that is a rose for me of working and attending an HBCU. I feel like a thorn for me, it was hard graduating, and then the people that I kicked it with, I now had to advise. And there was that very challenging disconnect of professionalism. And I can remember that. And so it was very challenging because I was a young professional, and, you know, these were people I literally went to school with. And some of them, they started there before me and I finished before them. And I'm like, how are we gonna have this? But that was just because I was a young professional. Now, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about it. So let's talk about it.
All right, I'm gonna flip it. Same question, PWI.
A rose for attending a PWI for me was,
attending,
you know, just seeing it. Okay, working and attending, just seeing the diversity of the student body. Now, the problem that I have with PWIs are that they tout all this diversity, equity, and inclusion in their student body, but it's not at the level of directors or their C-suite executive VPs, deans, and things like that. So I'm like, why you got all these diverse kids on this brochure, but you don't have diverse faculty and staff? So that might be a thorn for me, in that they have the diversity for the students, which is the roles, but the thorn is there's no diversity for us as professional staff. I would echo that as a thorn. I would definitely echo that as a thorn. I've been, you know, like you said, Cam, we worked at several institutions between all of us. And you look at the president's cabinet, or the vice president's cabinet, and the only black person is probably the one that does diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We have other skill sets outside of that. A rose for me is definitely access to resources that allows me to do better for my students, you know, and be able to send them to their national, for instance, in Fraternity Story Life, be able to send them to their send a couple of them to their national conventions, help them fund a program or a speaker. You know, I think that that's something that allows me to help keep money in their chapter bank account that they can use for something else. But yeah, you know, when I want to see a VP that looks like me or a VP that looks like me.
I want to see more than one.
Yeah, I want to see more than. Actually, I want to see more than one.
I don't want to see the token.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the one they always rely on. There are other people that are just as qualified and that can sit in those exact same seats as AVPs to help lead and guide these uncomfortable conversations that you guys still seem scared to have, that we have to have in order to enhance and better equip our organizations to be able to address the issues that we keep skirting around. Brothers, last thing I want to just ask you guys, from a higher ed lens, has one helped you successfully navigate your professional experiences better? So when you look at the work you've done or that you've been exposed to at the PWI or the HBCU, has one helped better, or is it just all encompassing for both of them for you?
All encompassing. I mean, I would recommend anybody, if you went to a HBCU for undergrad, go to a PWI for grad, and vice versa. If you went to a PWI for undergrad, go to HBCU for grad, because
you can still kick
it. It allows you to have a versatility of experiences that you can speak to, and both of them. It's like putting a picture on the wall, right? You need a hammer, but you also need the nails. So one is a hammer, one is the nails. You decide which one you pick up first. But I would say both of them provide you a rich experience that can help complement the other.
I agree. So I like how you said that. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Oh no! I was just gonna echo that sentiment. I mean, you know, so you got it.
I think there's a debate, but there really isn't. Like, both provide awesome and amazing opportunities for both. It just depends on the path that you choose. Some people just prefer the HBCU track. Some just prefer the PWI track. But for us, we've lived it and we've also worked it. So our experiences have been enriched the more by working and attending both of them, just because, you know, one raised me, one pays me.
Right. And I'm gonna say this real quick. So when I was talking to my frat brother last night, he made a very excellent statement. You know, he was like, Wright State gave me scholarship money. Central State didn't. You better take the people that done gave you this money. You better go to these white people's school. You better take the money that they gave you. And you know, the thing about it is, I had another conversation with a couple of my sorority sisters in the spring. They both graduated from PWI, the same PWI. And we're like, why HBCU people so defensive and all that stuff? And I'm like, well, I don't think it's that we're defensive, but I do think that there are PWI folks who discredit our experience.
And that's the thing that I was going to say. It typically, the people who talk the most high cash money stuff are the ones that's only experienced one institution. They've only either experienced HBCUs or they've only experienced PWIs. And so I don't feel like people can have a thoroughly intellectual and mature conversation or discussion. I don't want to say debate unless you've experienced both.
Because there's nothing to debate in the education.
Yeah, there's nothing to debate. Like if A&M Commerce was gonna give me money, guess what? I'm gonna go to A&M Commerce. And then I'm gonna get my graduate degree from, you know, a black school. It just so happened Paul Quinn gave Zach and I scholarship money when we switched our majors to education. And then we were able to go to A&M Commerce.
Yeah, like Harold said, you don't have to tear down one to uplift the other, but the people that I notice that, you know, tear them down are, like I said, the ones that go to these predominantly white institutions that somehow think that they're better than an HBCU institution.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And then the ones that go to an HBCU, whenever, now granted, when the folks at that one institution that I won't name did compare their college to a black school, you know which one I'm talking to. You know very intimately. Very intimately. Now that was a problem. That was a problem. However, you know, like we said, there's a difference between having a black college experience at a PWI versus an HBCU experience. Yes. Or a black experience at a PWI. And there's nothing wrong with either. However, respect that. Just like Saxa, Sigma, I'm an Alpha. Like the only people that be fighting about that stuff is people outside of me. It's like we should be looking at them like that one probate, like that one 2006 probate. Child, you know that probate. And here's that was just like
pop, lock, and drop it.
you ready to go? Okay. Because they fight. It's so ghetto. Oh my God, it's so ghetto. So, but yeah, I mean, I think, you know, to just wrap it up, I think that there's something to be said about both, and both have their place. You make your choice. Now, again, I'll go on record and say this though, and I see that my fraternity brother Travis, who I was having dinner with last night, is on here, so I'm going to say this for the record. Folks who go to PWIs, don't make these shirts. Don't make these shirts. Don't do it. Because how can you make a shirt about an experience that you have not been a part of? How? And so, as Greggy said, you had a black experience at a PWI. Yes, you did. But you can't talk about an HBCU-ish experience unless you know what an HBCU experience is like. And don't shade our schools but want to come to our homecomings.
You know what?
If I find that you're trying to shade schools, you ain't coming. And I'm going to put you on blast.
These boys, let me tell you something about these Shirley twins. First of all, let me tell my brothers, thank you for joining me. And it's crazy because people don't even realize, like, I think I'm somebody, but they're somebody. So like people are always like, do you know that you know the Shirley twins? I'm like, yeah, those are like my brothers. Like we done laugh, we done cry, we done cuss, we done fought, and when it's over, now you ready to go get something to eat. That's how we operate. We gonna get some food in and some drinks occasionally. You know what I'm saying? But I just want to thank you guys so much. I wanted to provide a different lens for tonight's show on the great debate. There is a debate out there that really shouldn't be. It just depends on who you are as a person. But I wanted to speak from the lens of we've been educated at both and we worked at both. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about our experiences working there, our experiences being educated there, and let's just have dialogue about it. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining me on tonight. My brothers, tell people what you have coming up. I know you guys are booked and busy as well. How can they keep up with you? How can they follow you if they're not already? If you're not booked and busy already, it's coming. I'm speaking it because we got to get this money. We got to get this money.
Our IG handles are right there. We're easy to find on IG. Follow us on LinkedIn. Yeah. You can find me, Zachary E.A. Shirley, EDD. Gregory Shirley, EDD. Now, let me tell you, follow me on Instagram. I promise I'm gonna try to follow you back. Instagram got the 7,500 follow limit, and I'm at 7,506. I don't know how I got there, but I can't follow nobody back. So, once people drop off, I'm gonna add you, but follow me still and DM me because we can talk. You can follow me because I'm rebuilding my Instagram after a slice snafu, but I'm only at 2344, so I got plenty of room. So you want to keep up with him? Come on, at your boy.
Y'all, let me tell y'all something. These brothers here are doing some amazing things. I'm so thankful that they were able to join me tonight. It's been a crazy week trying to get them on and me flipping here and there. But I thank you guys for joining me so much. Ladies and gentlemen, these are Doctors Zachary and Gregory Shirley of the DFW Metroplex area saying go vote. Follow them on LinkedIn. Follow them on Instagram. let's keep in contact with them, because they're going to do some great and amazing things coming down the pipeline. They're always on the front line doing the amazing work as higher ed professionals. So I'm so thankful to be connected to and attached to them. And they always know if they ever need me, I'm gonna come calling, and vice versa. So I love you, brother, so much. Thank y'all for joining me on tonight. This has been Dialogues with Doc for Wednesday, October the 14th, 2020. I will see you guys next Wednesday at 8:00 p.m. for another episode of Dialogues with Doc. Have an amazing week. Stay safe and get your, as grandma say, carry your ass and vote.
Yes.